Hey everybody, how's it going? Deep inside, I'm a massive nerd when it comes to cycling, so I'm going to share with you the top products that I have used the most in 2023. I'm going to explain really clearly what the products are, who they're from, why I have them, so you can work out if they're sponsored products or not, and it won't be ambiguous whatsoever, so you'll clearly know why I've chosen to use them and if they might be beneficial to you as well. Let's start with the bikes because they are ultimately the most pivotal part of riding a bike. In 2023, the bike I've ridden the most so far has been my road bike, and here's why. Okay, so we've had to take shelter indoors because it's wild and windy outside. This is my Lapierre Xelius SL9, and it's the bike I've ridden the most in 2023 because I've taken training that little bit more seriously. With a little bit of help of Luke Craddock from Precision Performance, I've been doing all of my intervals on this bike using the Wahoo power pedals to make sure that I'm recording all of that information. I've fallen in love with riding this bike because it's super fast. It's one of those bikes that really begs you to try hard, and it feels really rewarding when you do that as well. Some bikes you ride and they're just really neutral, they're really nice, really beautiful, but this one really, when you stand up, you really notice it. If you ever get a chance to try one, I highly recommend it. Also, the colour. It's so hard to depict just how beautiful the paint job is on these bikes, and actually it's a really intricate paint job when you look closely, and just the amount of fleck and all these different beautiful colours. It's the sort of bike that just begs to be ridden every time I get on it, and it really makes me smile. It makes me feel fast even when I'm not, and that's actually quite a unique thing for a road bike, I feel, because I've felt fast plenty of times over the years, but nothing ever feels as effortlessly quick at the moment as I do when I ride this bike. So I have a lot to thank this bike for. I've made a few changes to it since I've had it. I have jumped on the trend of slightly narrower bars. Yanto, you're completely to blame for this. 38 centimetres, centre to centre. That's as narrow as I feel is necessary. I did have a little go at turning the levers in for a little while, but that's really not for me, so they're straight levers again. 38 centimetres is okay. I think you're losing a little bit of ability to move the bike laterally when you get underneath 40 centimetres, but it's probably dependent on your body shape as well. So for me, that's as narrow as I'd like to go. But because it was such hard work rerouting the brake hoses, they're staying as well. Okay, next up, the bike I've ridden the second most this year is the Lapierre XRM 8.9. This is the cross-country bike, the bike that I first raced back in January. I actually raced it last year as well. I ride this one every single time that I still want to train, but I want to guarantee myself that I just have a huge amount of fun as well. It's nearly as capable as a trail bike. It has 120mm travel on the front and 110 on the rear, but it's super stiff, meaning that it pedals really nicely when you're on the road. I do quite a lot of road in between the off-road trails that I ride. It guarantees to give me a big smile every single time I ride it, and I just find that addictive. Mountain biking is like a hobby I never had, as in I've always loved mountain biking ever since I first tried it, way back in the 90s. I just didn't have the time to do it, whereas now I can integrate it into my training a little bit better. You'll notice there aren't any pedals on this one at the moment. That's because they're currently on my e-bike, which I've been using to recover from illness. But if I want to go out and do a really good training session and really just have an amazing adventure, I don't think you can beat cross-country rides. I think they have a little bit of everything. It's a little bit more extreme than gravel. It's a little bit less rigid than on the road. It's just, for me, it's the perfect combination of riding bikes, making smiles, having an adventure, and just escaping daily life, really. And then finally, the third most used bike of 2023 so far has been the Wahoo Kickr bike. This is what we use for the L'Ecole Zwift sessions, which is a part of my job at L'Ecole. Use this one 4 to 5 times a week for around 40 to 60 minutes each time. We host 4 online sessions live, that's myself, and then on Sunday we also have an endurance ride hosted by club members. I love this bike. I've used it now 4 times a week since 2020-21. It stood up to all of the sweat and abuse that I've given it. You can adjust it to have any position. It's a really great functional piece of kit. If you only have one indoor trainer space, or you want to have one indoor trainer bike, I think it's a great option for anyone at home because it can be adjusted for my kids to fit even, or someone that's much, much taller than myself. I spend a lot of time sat on there. The only thing I've changed on that actually is the saddle. The saddle that came on it wasn't very comfortable at all. So I think it's really important at this stage in the video to point out this bike belongs to Wahoo or L'Ecole, comes completely via work. I'm not entirely sure exactly whose property that is. And then these 2 bikes, these belong to Lapierre UK, and I have the privilege of riding them as little or as much as I possibly can, for which I'm incredibly grateful. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be able to enjoy my passion and my hobby in the way that I do currently. So a huge thank you to Lapierre UK. Riding bikes lots in the climate that I live in generally means that at some point I'm going to get wet and cold. One of my favourite items of cycling kit ever made is the L'Ecole Aqua Zero jersey. It's actually hanging on the back of the chair right now. Even when I was racing, I used to buy these or beg Yanto for one, just because they're such an incredibly versatile garment for when you're training. So I need to caveat this with, it does depend on the type of riding you're doing and probably where you live. But living here from September through to May, you can pretty much guarantee that on any day of the week, you could use one of these and be comfortable enough. So rides that are quite intense, it's a really good garment for breathability. But if you're doing quite intense rides and there's a chance of rain, it's going to keep the worst of the moisture away from your skin. It's going to keep you warm. It regulates temperature really well, which is one of its main selling points. So for me, if I'm doing intervals, this is a great garment. I can use it when it's not too cool with a real short sleeve undervest, like a string vest. And then in the winter, maybe double undervest or a thermal undervest, something like that, and maybe even a gilet under the top, over the top, sorry. It's a really versatile garment, one of my favourite pieces of cycling kit ever made. It just fits really nicely, tight to the skin, it's not heavy, it doesn't hold water in the way that you might expect it to. It's just my favourite piece of kit ever made. Obviously, working for the Cole, this comes out of my staff allowance, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. It's the sort of thing, like I said before, even when I was racing in teams that weren't sponsored by the Cole clothing, I did buy these or beg for them. They are really good quality items of clothing. I suppose ultimately what I'm about to show you is the single most used piece of kit in 2023, and these are Sidas insoles. These came from Kerno Physio last year, if you can remember that. There was a video about having these fitted. These are without a doubt the best investment for comfort on the bike that I've ever made. Custom insoles. Doesn't take long to have them made, but if you suffer from sore feet or sore legs or lack of stability sometimes on the bike, I guarantee this is the best thing that you can do to try and improve that comfort. I first had custom footbeds, I think in 2012, and then in 2016 I had another set. They generally last for around 6 years, depending on how much you ride your bike. So it's a really good, cost-effective investment for comfort on your bike. Something that I was quite reluctant to try originally are these Shoks headphones. Now, I've been wearing them for the last couple of weeks. They were actually sent to me by Shoks, and I wasn't sure that I was going to get on with them. But since having had them, I've completely stopped using in-ear headphones when I ride my bike. I really love listening to music when I ride my bike. I like shutting myself off from the world. I've never had an issue with a car creeping up on me and not having noticed it. I spend a lot of time looking around behind me. But for off-road riding especially, when I like the sound of the tyres for feedback, these are amazing. Even on the road when it's windy, you can still hear the audio through these. They work with bone conductivity. I'm not entirely sure of the exact science behind this, but they work really well. I've been really impressed with them. And the cooling quality, if you're driving, for example, we don't have Bluetooth headset in our vehicles, it works really well. And Micah said when I was calling her whilst driving the van the other day that she could hear me really clearly, and I think that's also amazing. I'm trying to turn them on with the wrong button now. So yeah, I've been using these quite a lot recently, and I'm really impressed. So if you like riding your bike and listening to music, I highly recommend considering something like this. I don't have an issue with traffic creeping up on me, like I said before, but it is a really great way to enjoy music without the fear that something could creep up on you from behind. It's also great on shared usage paths where you can quickly and easily say thank you or excuse me to other people without worrying that you're projecting your voice hugely compared to what was necessary when you went to say hello. So thank you as well to Shoks for sharing them. Products which I suppose I use all the time, and that's because it's a fitness tracking watch, is my Garmin Fenix 6. I bought this way back in November 2019 when I was intending to return to competition, having worked at GCN. I wanted it to track my body statistics, so things like resting heart rate and heart rate variability, body battery, the stress levels and things like that, because I've always had up and down energy levels and I've never really been able to pinpoint exactly what the cause of that was. To be really honest, I still haven't been able to pinpoint that, even with 3.5 years of Garmin watch data. One of the things that I have noticed is that over the last few years, my sleep quality has become more consistent and improved. That coincides with giving up alcohol completely. Also, stress levels are lower. One thing that's really good though is it really helps identify how well you're recovering from illness. If you look at the screen now, you'll see that my heart rate variability over the last couple of weeks has been really, really poor, and for whatever reason, I'm just not recovering. Hopefully that will start to trend upwards again and we can get back to some training. This is one of my favorite bits of kit because I love nerding out on data. I spend hours scrolling through the Garmin Connect screen. I just think it's a really great way of tracking what your body's doing, how it's responding to training. And equally, you don't always need to rely on a head unit then. Sometimes you can just turn it on your wrist and not pay attention to any of the numbers. Ride, knowing that you're tracking everything, but without the stress of having to chase those numbers. And I do like that. As you can see on the list so far, there's a real mixture of things that I've either paid for at different times in the past, or been given. And I'm incredibly grateful either way, if I've been able to afford it myself or if I've been given it. It's something which I I really believe helps enhance my cycling and my life, partly because I just really like the technological side of things. I spend a long time reading about anything that I purchase, watching reviews, watching videos on YouTube, trying to understand what is this, what impact will it have on my life, how can I use it to get more from myself. Ultimately, that's what I'm trying to sell myself, is that something like a watch will somehow improve my performance on the bike. The same with the narrow handlebars. You try and read all the different bits of information that are available out there to try and understand, will this really have an effect? 2 watts at 40 kilometers an hour or something? Not entirely sure it's that important, but it's nice to have. Right, helmets. So I'm exclusively using M.I.P.S helmets this year. A huge thank you to Rally Parts and Accessories for making this possible. This is the one I wear the most. It's the Aero helmet. That's partly because of the weather at the moment. I suspect as the weather improves, I'll start using the more vented helmet. Hopefully that audio has not made a terrible noise with the straps hitting there. I wear these on the mountain bike as well. They're just really comfortable. I really like the M.I.P.S, and actually for me personally, M.I.P just fits my head really, really well. And they're all in white, which I used to say I didn't like white helmets, but I think I've kind of grown on it, and it matches the whole kit really nicely. So that's always a bonus, isn't it? I think if your helmet matches your kit and your shoes, and you're onto a winner. A product that I'd never ride my bike without, again, is some sort of daytime running light. These are from Magicshine UK. Thank you to Nick there. I didn't buy these, but I would buy daytime running lights to have on my bike at all times. I just think if ever there was a situation where something went wrong, you need to remove as much blame from yourself as possible, and it just does feel that little bit safer having daytime running lights on. I use them on my mountain bikes, on the road. These last really, really well, the battery life, but most importantly actually is the weatherproofing. I do tend to ride in all sorts of different conditions, and on the mountain bikes they really do sit right in all of the abuse, all of the mud and the dirt that's flying up off the rear tyre, straight into the lights, but they always work. I use them on the mountain bikes because I ride quite considerable distances on the road between certain types of trail. Helps improve the average speed, so it looks really cool on the internet. But actually, most importantly, it's just it opens up a whole world of different trails that you can ride. You can ride in very different areas around here. You can go to the sand dunes up towards Newquay, or you can go and ride in the rocky valley area of Paradise, which I think to me is what riding a bike is all about, just seeing as much different variety as possible in one ride and having a real explore. So yeah, daytime running lights are an absolute must. Generally, I'll have one on the bike at any given time. That's front and rear. If it's deep, dark winter, I'll probably have 2 on the front and 2 on the back as well. Just partly because you don't want the battery to die in the colder temperatures. Batteries don't last so well, but also you just want that increased visibility. If I ride at night, then I have the real big heavy ones, and they are really good. They turn nighttime into daylight, basically, which always makes night riding good fun. So the Magicshine Lights are one of those products that, whilst I haven't actually paid for these, they are 100% the sort of thing that I would buy myself. I wouldn't ever recommend buying something if I didn't truly believe in it. I wouldn't consider buying it myself, or wouldn't have purchased it myself. And that's why it took quite a long time to come up with this list. I wanted to come up with things which either I've really used the absolute most, or they're essential items which I truly believe have enhanced my cycling over the last 12 months, or that I think someone out there will benefit from hearing and learning about. I'm a huge nerd when it comes to cycling technology. I spend a long time, like I said before, researching and understand what the products are, how I can use them to my benefit, and how I can get the most out of them. If you have any questions about any of the things I've shared in this video, I'd love to hear them. Drop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy your cycling. This will be the only product type video that I'll do for the entire year, I would have thought, unless there are any specific type questions. Obviously we look at bikes, that's a little bit different. I like to share the bikes that I'm riding. I think that's really important as well, just to understand bike setup. I think there are so many intricacies when it comes to bike setup that can really help people personalize their bikes and help people to get the most out of them. And when it comes to using technology, things like data fields on your Wahoo head units, your Garmin head unit, whatever it is, they can really make a difference to how you're interpreting the data that you're seeing on screen as well, and just make your rides that little bit more productive. So if you have any questions about that, I'd love to hear them and I'll do my best to answer them. Otherwise, hope you're enjoying spring in the UK, apparently. It feels like winter. It's no warmer now than it was in the winter. With a little bit of luck, I'll be back on the road very soon and bring you another race report, that sort of thing, and an update on what happened a few weeks ago at the Wally Gimba. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.